it's just in our blood, right? We're all protectors, right? We like to kind of put an end to bullying, and you can do that as a military person, or you can do that as a law enforcement officer. So it's an easy fit for a lot of guys coming out of the military.
Hey guys, check out the 2023 Street Cop Conference, April 23rd through the 28th, Gaylord Convention Center. It's going to be the event of the year. Keynote speakers include Rob O'Neill, the guy who killed bin Laden, Kyle Carpenter, the youngest living Medal of Honor recipient, Navy SEAL Jason Redmond, Fox News host Tommy Lahren, Marine Corps Special Forces and Leadership Coach Cody Alford, Sheriff Wayne Ivey, Sheriff David Clark, and Sheriff Mark Lamb. It's going to be one hell of an event. And on top of that, we have all of our instructors and additional instructors from other companies going to be at the event, giving you everything they know for you to have a successful career and get the results you want to get in the field as a police officer. On top of attending the event, you'll get face-to-face time with every instructor attending the event, and all the keynote speakers will spend time with you. We got special events all week, giveaways, nightlife. It's going to be really, really worth your time, energy, and effort. I promise you, you will not regret it for a second. To register for the conference, check out streetcop.com, click conference, and everything you need will be there on the homepage. If you are looking for a room, just click book a room. The block has been sold out at the Gaylord Opryland Convention Center, but there are many hotels nearby within a walking distance of the event. You don't want to miss out on this opportunity. We will see you there.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. Today I have with us Nick Norris. He's the fucking man. I'll let him give you his background. We're going to talk about cool shit today, important stuff, mental health. But Nick, I appreciate you being here today. I was just giving Nick a little dissertation on my night before. It is my second podcast of the day. So dude, tell us about you, man. I know you got a crazy fucking background, cool shit. Guys, you're a real somebody, you know?
Yeah, right. I guess I'm somebody to some people. But yeah,
somebody to
dude,
me, Nick Norris. You're somebody to me, Nick Norris. Guy's got one of the most contagious smiles you'll ever see.
That's all that matters to me right now, my friend. Yeah, bro. I grew up in Chicago, blue collar community, a lot of law enforcement and firefighters. My family were all firefighters. My wife's family were all firefighters. We've been with each other since high school, and ended up going to the Naval Academy. Graduated from school in 2003, and then I served in the SEAL teams post training from 2003 to 2013.
It's amazing.
Deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan during the height of kind of wartime years, and then transitioned out of the military in 2013. And I've been an entrepreneur, I guess. I've started a couple CPG companies, and I own a commercial real estate firm. That's what I transitioned into originally, of all things. Not the most logical fit for a former SEAL, but it's been good. And a big part of my life right now, brother, as I mentioned briefly, is mental health awareness. And, you know, I've been very open about sharing my personal struggles. And, you know, I just want to serve as an example and maybe a beacon of light for guys, whether they're veterans or law enforcement or anybody else in the world that's out there struggling, and find a little bit of hope so we can put an end to the mental health epidemic and suicide epidemic that we're facing right now.
Yeah, at least hopefully put a dent in it for the time
Totally.
being. Try to plug this fucking thing up a little bit. It's insane.
It's all we can do, right? You may take action to have an impact, and you know that's it's better than taking no action at all, right?
Dude, I've met so many Navy SEALs, and like I know what questions not to ask you, because it's the same fucking questions that people ask you every time they find out you're a Navy SEAL. Like, how hard was buds, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure. I'm happy. Hey, ask away, my friend. I'm totally open to whatever you want to ask. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same questions, right?
I think leading into the discussion of how you got to a place of you were dealing with your own struggles is interesting. You know, I think everybody always has interest in buds. You know, and I hear from a lot of the guys. I'm friends with a lot of Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, Force Recon. Basically, because of the nature of the business that we're in, we have this podcast. It's law enforcement. It's synonymous with military. Christ, half the cops in the country were in the military. Some of them were special forces. You ever seen a video? We got to get the guy on who, you ever seen a video, Frank? There's a guy who he responds to an active shooter or somebody shooting in the street. If you've never seen this one, Nick, you got to look at this. He pulls up He was drinking a cup of coffee. He puts it on the dashboard of the car, pops out, walks around the back of his car, throws his lift gate open on his Tahoe, takes his M4 out, charges it, sets the sight, pulls it up, and hits the guy like 160 yards one shot. And like literally back from before he's doing that, you'll hear is like pop, 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 pop. He takes it out, cool. It doesn't even you can hear him breathing. He's like, he might even listen, like,
yeah,
right? He could be doing that.
Totally.
Takes the thing out, hits it, and all you hear is like he's like, whatever his call sign is, man down, one down. Shots fired, one down.
Yeah.
See,
so that dude is cool under pressure, and he likely spent time in Iraq or Afghanistan.
So he was, so that's what I said to these guys, and I say it in class all the time. We found out he's special forces. So he was special forces guy that became a cop. And that's not uncommon. Yep. There's a lot of cops who were special forces, Green Berets and Force Recon and Raiders. And I haven't really met many SEALs that have gone into law enforcement that I haven't seen, but other branches of the service that were special forces, a lot of them end up as cops, which is interesting to me.
I mean, it's an easy fit, right? I mean, a lot of veterans will go into like contracting, and when contracting was really hot and heavy. But I think since some of that stuff has dried up, you see a lot of guys going to law enforcement because it's just in our blood, right? We're all protectors, right? We like to kind of put an end to bullying, and you can do that as a military person, or you can do that as a law enforcement officer. So it's an easy fit for a lot of guys coming out of the military.
What are some things that people don't know about being a Navy SEAL that often surprises them? And I don't know if I hate to sound so fucking cliche, dude, but it's like for my own personal. You're
not, bro. Well, hey, I'll speak for myself. Most guys that make it through are not massive dudes. It actually is more beneficial to be a little guy going through training. So I'm 5'6". I mean, I'm 165 pounds now, so I'm not a big person. I think when I went through BUDS, I was I finished BUDS at like 150 pounds. I just like wasted away. But most team guys are kind of smaller dudes because the training requires that you're, going through BUDS, you're running a lot. So being resilient to stress fractures and carrying less weight actually gives you a higher probability of success making it through selection. So a lot of people think that it's all like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura from Predator, right? Like 240 pounds and just jacked. Now there are guys like that, and they are an absolute necessity when you're carrying heavy weapons and stuff like that. But a lot of the guys are smaller, and a lot of people think that we're all big dudes, but we're little guys.
Not on a SEAL team. On a SEAL team, are there different like positions? Like, were you or was everybody trained universally?
So yeah, you definitely serve in a role, right? So like I got commissioned out of the Naval Academy. I went through BUDS as an officer, and then as I went into a SEAL platoon, I was an element leader. Now, we look at leadership throughout the ranks, so it doesn't matter if you're the officer, senior officer, you're the most junior enlisted. We demand leadership at every level, but my job was to be a leader. And that meant, kind of keeping my head above everything else, coordinating, making sure that I was supporting everybody in our element to be able to, make us more effective. And then, the platoon or the squad is broken down into roles. We have breachers, you have snipers, you have communicators. So everybody will specialize, but I will tell you that like, the unique thing about the SEAL teams is that we all go through the same selection process. Whether you're an officer or an enlisted personnel, you train together, you're selected together. And I think some of the fundamental kind of tenacity and capability physically and mentally is universal across the ranks. It doesn't matter, who you are. You have an innate ability to kind of persevere through adversity, and you have an innate ability to kind of shoot, move, and communicate at the most basic level. So yeah, there's specialization, but at the same time, we do have some fundamental similarities.
Dude, give me two really good BUDS story. And we're going to go through this piece by piece. It's not going to just be there's a BUDS fucking conversation. But I think we deserve two good BUDS stories.
Okay, two good BUDS stories.
And by the way, it could either be, you could pick. It doesn't have to be like this one time. Like you could be like, hey man, I had fucking broke my right toe and then I had to carry a boat, and like, but two ones that like people are just like your friends are like, Damn, Nick, that's fucking crazy.
Well, I mean, hey, so one that's like a funny fact that maybe this is like people don't realize that SEALs are for the most part smaller people. When you're going through buds, the hardest thing about buds is it's cold, right? We get put in cold water. That's why people quit. The Pacific Ocean, regardless of what time of year it is never very warm. And you get very used to urinating on each other, which is not something that people realize. Or you're like, you hear it and you're like, dude, that is really fucked up. But the feeling of somebody pissing on you is only comfortable when you're like neck deep in 60-degree water for like 20 or 30 minutes. Then you don't really care, dude. Like, I actually would applaud dudes if like you're sitting on the beach, jackhammering because like you've been freezing your ass off in the Pacific, and you feel like this warm like wave of comfort, as you're sitting there kind of nut to butt with a bunch of your friends. And it's the only time in my life I've actually been thankful that somebody pissed on me. And I haven't had anybody piss on me since then, which is a good thing.
Well, listen, don't yuck other people's yums. I mean, if you like people paying on you, that's fine. It'll make you fucking
it's
weird.
Fine, dude. Hey, no judgment, right? I mean, we accept so much in this world right now. So,
oh, for sure, dude. For sure. And dude, listen, I'm not trying to compare buds to police academies, but there are, I don't know, when you're a dude and like you get situations like, it's weird how much a lot of that shit goes out the window of what you give a fuck about. Like when you're trying to do something, even in academies, some of the academies I went to were more difficult. And, the fact of the matter is some of that shit was weird, but like we just did it. Like, dude, I mean, here's one that you don't like expect. Like, I remember our first academy, they were fucking nuts, at least for the first couple of weeks. And, these guys for like 2-3 weeks now that you're friends. And we go to so this is pre-academy, we go to our post-academy, now our formal academy. And, dude, we're getting yelled at naked, right? Like they're like, get the showers. And like, we're standing there, like holding a bar of soap in our left hands, a towel in our right hands, and standing in like a line. And like, now these are your friends and you're all fucking naked together. All right. So back to pissing on men.
All right. So that's funny little known fact. On a serious note, I mean, I probably have shared this one before. My biggest, I guess, superpower, or I think for a lot of guys from our community is our ability to innately compartmentalize. So like, I think you see it. I mean, hey, hence your story about the guy that set his coffee down and then, hammered a guy down at 160 yards, right? Cool as a cucumber, able to compartmentalize emotion immediately. So works really well in a like high stress scenario. Not the best thing to have as you kind of leave active duty service. But I remember, it's like the worst, right? And we could go into that in more depth later in the conversation. But I remember going and doing a log PT in buds, so it's whatever, 6 to 8 of us on this big, I don't know, 200-pound log. And, literally had like everybody in my boat crew, except for like maybe 2 or 3 guys, quit during the middle of the log PT. So we're carrying this thing up and over sand dunes. And we're, doing PT with it. We get to the point where we're just failing. We're at like physical exhaustion. And, the instructor's there to kind of like, the cadre wants to test you, right? So they don't add anybody to the log. By the end of the log PT, there's probably 3 of us trying to carry this log. And you've already been getting beat down for like 2.5, 3 hours. So like physically couldn't even like pick the log up. And we're just getting like just beat down. And I remember completely losing it, carrying the log off the beach and having to, I mean, basically I just like lost control of my emotions, and it resonates with me because I was embarrassed, right? Like I lost my cool. I'm yelling at dudes. I'm like, and it's not my personality, right? It's like, hey, you suffer in silence. You're a professional. You put finish the tough evolution and you move on to the next one. And I did not do that. And it has been like etched in my mind. And I think from that point forward, I mean, for me, I think that was where like the mental compartmentalization of emotion like started, because I was so embarrassed after the fact that I lost my shit that I learned, I mean, like, hey, I need to like lock this shit away. And frankly, I don't know if it was like premeditated by the instructor staff, to kind of get me to that point, but super thankful for it. I mean, it was literally the thing that kind of drove me to be a better operator and leader in high stress scenarios. But yeah, it definitely was a point where like, I literally didn't think I could make it through. Like literally, like I thought that like, to quit, I would physically need to be like, okay, I'm freezing, I'm putting my hand up and I'm going to quit. I never thought that there would be something physically so arduous during training that I just couldn't physically complete it, because I was in fairly good shape, but I literally got to my breaking point. I mean, physically incapable of like literally picking the log up off the ground. And yeah, definitely a formidable point in my time as a student in training.
So why didn't you quit? What did you tell yourself?
I mean, you just don't, right? I mean, for me, I think it was the thought of letting everybody down that didn't have the opportunity to go into training, because I came out of the Naval Academy. There was 16 of us that got selected out of a class of, I mean, call it, I think we're probably 850, 900 students that graduated. Maybe
Wow.
700 are male. So out of that 700, 16 of us got to go to buds. So it was a privilege to go to selection. And the thought of letting down one of those guys that had to go serve aboard ship for 2 or 3 years and then maybe fight their way back to selection, it would have been embarrassing for me. I mean, I literally, I kind of had gone through this mental exercise of, okay, let's fear set and take it back to like, if I quit, how would I feel? What would I do? Would I ever be proud to tell people that I graduated from the academy? Would I be proud to, be part of the service? Like, I mean, that stuff was so mortifying for me that it became kind of like a non-choice, if you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, no, I get it, dude. And that's interesting that you say that, because you just don't. It's really, in my mind, it's like goes on a t-shirt. It's a really profound statement in 3 words. Like you just don't, don't quit. So, dude, let's move forward to like some of your experiences in the field. I guess some of this stuff's classified, but maybe a story or two, because people like hearing this shit about some fucked up shit that went on in your days. Like, how many missions did you guys go on? Like a countless amount of missions during that time, 10 years?
I mean, so when I was deployed in like 06 the first time around, and then I was in Afghanistan in 2010. So yeah, I mean the battle rhythm for us, and I frame this as I was like the atypical, or at least atypical from what I thought being in the SEAL teams was going to be like. We operated at night to a certain degree, but we had to support counterinsurgency doctrine. And at the time, especially in like 06, it was like daylight combat operations, which was like not what you thought you'd be doing as a special operations guy. So, I mean, we did, I think my first deployment, I mean, we probably were 60, 70 operations during the course of a 6 to 7 month deployment. And a lot of that stuff is like, daylight patrol to like presence patrol with like a Marine Corps unit or something like that. So it wasn't just like going in and hitting a house at night. A lot of it was, strapping it on and walking out in broad daylight with a partner force, like an Iraqi partner force, and a Marine like battalion sized element, and basically walking around an area to like show that we occupy it until you get contacted by an insurgent force. And then you're like returning fire, strongholding a building, and then like, leapfrogging into another area until you've broken contact. So I experienced a lot of that. It was like a big wake up call for me as a young SEAL officer. My first combat operation as a young guy, like literally came into our area of operations, and I was told by, our platoon commander and troop commander, like, hey, you're supporting this Marine Corps element. They're north of the Euphrates River. They live, the Marines, I say this every time, but I'll emphasize it. The Marines that I that I fought alongside during that deployment, some of the most courageous guys that I have served in combat alongside. I mean, literally, they were infantry Marines and they lived in squalor. They were in like a cluster of buildings surrounded by HESCOs, which are like kind of expedient earthen barriers. And they got mortared every single day. I mean, I think like the month we showed up, they got hit. They had like 120 impacts within the wire during the month of whatever it was, like May or whatever. So just badass dudes, and can't say enough good things about them. So like I went out there, brand new guy, junior officer, show up. I'm like, hey, sir, like to the major, like, what can we do to support you guys? He's like, well, we're going out on a patrol, in a few hours. I take your guys and we'll take you out and we'll go patrol. So literally, we're 250 meters outside the front gate, patrolling through like an open farm field. And granted, like that area near the Euphrates in Iraq is like super green. Like it's not desert. It like literally looks like you're in Southeast Asia. Like it's like rice paddy type grass, like flooded farm fields, palm groves everywhere. It's totally different than what you expect. So we're patrolling through this field. And we're in a big like echelon formation. There's 100 dudes to our right, another 50 dudes to our left. And like literally, I mean, it was like out of a movie. Like we have an IED go high order about probably 50 feet behind my rear security, who was a reservist that was connected to us. And like, it's like a straight up like movie explosion because the IED had sunk into the earth so far that it kind of like tamped down the explosion, and it just shot this dirt plume in the air that was like super Hollywood, I mean, because like an explosion on the surface, like if you know anything about like high explosives, dude, it looks like a flash, right? There's no fireball, like there's no like big cloud or anything. It's just like a flash and it's over. But this thing was like literally raining dirt on us. Like I remember like you're like, oh my God, like what the hell just happened? I remember like bounding into the next house. And then like we took, taking automatic weapons fire. And it's like my wake up call, right? First time I've ever like gone outside the wire and we're getting like, we have automatic weapons, like, impacting around our position. And I got a dirt plume behind me because some IED went off behind us. So definitely not what I was expecting. But that was kind of like how the beginning of that deployment started until we started kind of morphing our not rules of engagement, but the way that we were executing in support of the Marines. We started actually being a little bit more proactive and utilizing some of our sniper capability and just our ability to kind of get into places like at night and hide like in buildings and then be there to kind of provide overwatch or security for some of these larger like Iraqi and Marine Corps elements that were doing patrols up there. Because, the first part of the deployment was like literally just like that story. It was go out, wait until you get attacked and then react to their attack, which is not what you want to do on a regular basis. Like you want to figure out a way to take the upper hand. And we figured out how to do that in time, but it definitely was a surprise to me going out there for the first time.
Did you get more calm the more you endured combat?
Yeah, you definitely do, right? It's like anything else. I think the more you're exposed to something, you start to stress inoculate. But, there is the dynamic of like when I first went over that first 06 deployment, you kind of, you're bred in the teams through selection and training to be like invincible, right? Like you win all the time. Like that's just your mindset. There is no alternative to that. And you're never going to quit. So you feel like you're kind of a superhero. Like you go into those gnarly situations and like you kind of can just deal with it from inception because you've been bred that way. You've been kind of stress inoculated and programmed. And I will say there was kind of this inflection point where I was super comfortable even right from inception, but then we had a SEAL, the first SEAL killed in Iraq in our sister troop. A guy named Mark Lee was killed in Ramadi. And when Mark was killed on that deployment, it was like a sobering moment. For everybody, right? Like you're going out there thinking that you are unstoppable and invincible, and that these rounds aren't even rounds, right? You're like, you kind of treat them like they're blank fire, and you just kind of do your job and execute. And, after that, I remember, kind of feeling the weight of leadership, to a certain degree, knowing that like, hey, we've had a bunch of close calls and everybody's survived so far. And you start, there was definitely a period of time where I'm like, man, it weighed on me heavier. I almost like kind of like I regressed, I feel like, for a little bit, because I was starting to get more cautious than I needed to be, until I kind of started to get back into that rhythm and felt comfortable again. But yeah, I mean, a long answer to your question, I think the training that we go through is so good that it inoculates us well. But, there is that moment in real combat where, you realize that this isn't just a game, right? Like there's serious consequences on the table. And then coping with that, I think then there's like this longer tail ramp up to get truly more comfortable, knowing the gravity of what's at stake.
Did you love your time in the Navy SEALs?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's nothing else in the world like it. And I'd say that's the camaraderie that you feel in a combat arms profession. Being a SEAL, that was my experience, but I could tell you, I mean, I'm sure it's synonymous with any other branch of service that went into combat. And frankly, I say this to some close friends of mine, actually a very close friend of mine who's a law enforcement officer in Chicago. And dude, I mean, it's no different, man. You're carrying a gun and you're doing dangerous stuff and you're going up against bad dudes that want to take your life. Like, you feel a sense of camaraderie in law enforcement or in the military that is, it cannot be easily replicated in this world, because there's not a lot of situations or careers that put you in a situation where, your life is on the line or the lives of people around you are on the line. So, I mean, yeah, that dude, it's addictive, right? That's why people do it. It's not for the money, right? People spend a career in the military or law enforcement because I think they get addicted to that feeling of camaraderie and kind of like the high stakes nature of the job. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful, man. I mean, some of my closest relationships that I have were forged in my time during the SEAL teams.
Who do you guys fear more on the SEAL teams at this time? Was it Saddam Hussein or Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago? Who caused more carnage?
Oh, God. Oh, man.
Dude,
I mean,
like now, like, I think there are more people being killed in Chicago than probably
dude, totally.
Afghanistan. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even in the height of the war, right? I mean, the Iraq and Afghanistan were all over the news, but we used to laugh because I'd be like, I think more people were murdered this summer than died in like southeastern Afghanistan. Like, brutal, right? It's a battlefield. I mean, I'll give you another story. I remember coming back in 2006 from deployment, and for some reason I had to go up to Los Angeles for something. I live in San Diego, so I never go north just because it's like horrible traffic. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. But dude, I got off at the wrong exit in LA, and like I could have swore I was back in like Chaldea, Iraq. Like, it was like, I mean, my spidey senses were like lit up. I mean, dude, it was like super gnarly. So if people want to know what it's like going overseas, just go into an area like, I mean, in Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. And dude, there's dangerous places in this country. Like, you can't take it lightly. And that's why I have such like deep respect for the law enforcement community, because like literally you are going into areas that are as dangerous, if not more dangerous, because of the restrictions that are placed upon our law enforcement officers. And like literally, like you basically are at a disadvantage the entire time. Like, you don't get to take the tactical advantage, right? Like, you have to literally be there and put yourself in very compromising situations. So like I always tell my friend Mike Hurley is a Chicago police officer, grade school friend, the guy that actually got me interested in the SEAL teams. Mike served in the Marine Corps, and I always tell him, because he's like self-deprecating, right? He'll never let anybody know. He's never gonna pat himself on the back. He's always telling me like how proud he is to be a friend of mine, and I'm like, dude, you have a tough job, bro, and like. I always will tell you that you got the tougher job than I had. So yeah, I can't say enough, man, about what our law enforcement have to deal with nowadays. Like it's brutal. Your hands are tied.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the Street Cop podcast, do us a favor and give us a review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. Tell a friend. We don't charge anything for the episodes. We appreciate your support. Check us out on any social platform by putting into the search bar Street Cop Training. Give us a follow. We have a lot of free content coming out every single day that you might not catch here on the podcast, and it's important for you to be able to do your job more professionally, and we also entertain you as well. Dude, so in 2004, I ended up taking a job in Washington, D.C. as a police officer, right? Now, I had never been to D.C. in my life. I never forget coming over one of the bridges there, like the 15th Street Bridge or something, and the guy who was driving our van that was carting us around, he was a sergeant. They put like 12 of us in a van. It was half the class. They had two vans. They pick it up as the hotel. And I remember driving over thinking, I'm like, oh, my God, that's the fucking thing from the $5 bill right there. It was the Jefferson Memorial, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, my God, I've never seen this stuff. Like, it's crazy, bro. Like, he's like, you never saw this shit? I'm like, nah. But I remember coming out after going through the academy, coming out, I was in field training, and I worked Southeast DC for my first field training rotation. And dude, Southeast DC is fucking wild. And I remember the first day I was there. Now, dude, what people don't realize about Washington, DC is the city was designed to fool or trick invading troops.
Totally.
Which brother. I'm sure in 1793, this was super important. But in 2004, as a police officer, my third year in law enforcement, I've never been here in my life. Dude, it's wild. It's really hard to figure out. There's no GPS, right? I think TomToms at the time and like those Garmin systems, they were like $1,100, right? Nobody had them. And you were always like, man, should I just get one of these things? I'm not kidding you, Nick. I used to drive around. Because the easiest map to read was the one the National Park Service had of DC. That was the easiest. Okay. I had this MPS like brochure map that you can get at any stand along the National Mall, and that's how I used to get around town. But I remember the first night I'm out, and my field training officer, Eduardo Delgado, who I haven't seen, in 18 years, obviously 19 years, he says to me, see this part of Southeast DC? He's like, you don't ever come here alone. And what do you mean? He's like, you got to come you need at least two cops to come in together into this area of the town. And I went, why? He's like, they'll take pot shots at your car, dude. He's like, you can't come in here. They shoot at police cars. And I remember the end of the night, he's like, do you have any questions? And I went, can we go over what part of town I'm not supposed to go in? Because I don't know where I am. And like, I don't want to end up there by myself, dude. And I got to tell you, dude, I still, by the time we graduated field training or finished that evolution of field training, I remember being a single guy in a car. We didn't ride doubles. I was 22 years old, dude. 22, sure. 23 years old, turning 23. Yep. And I'm cruising around the projects again. And I'm like, where did he say I shouldn't go? Right? I'm like, look, real. And like, I'm calling up the place and I'm like, maybe this is one of those places where he said I shouldn't go. Dude, like, it's crazy. Like, a lot of us came there from New York. So you have a guy making a traffic stop. Then he's calling for a backup unit. And I'm like, I don't know where this dude is.
Yeah,
I know, like, where I was like, I don't know where this guy is, bro. I'm like, I remember my friend Tim calling for a fucking like a real backup, like it was like a significant, like, hey, I need somebody right away. And I ran hot, lights and sirens, and I'm like, I hope this is the quadrant I'm supposed to be in. And dude, like, such a miracle of God.
Yeah, dude.
I ended up in the right quadrant, and I saw his patrol car. And I never forget this like sense of relief pulling around the corner that I actually found him, and he didn't need help. And I'm like, I was like too proud to say that I like. Where am I? Anybody can help me out here? We had 30, 40 cars on the road. I'm like, can anybody tell me where I'm supposed to be going for this kid? So, dude, when you say that, bro, I've been in situations. I was on a traffic stop in South DC one time, and I had this guy stopped. And, dude, I mean, I'm from fucking New Jersey, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think anything's that bad here. Newark's fucked up. Camden's insane. But I never went to these places, right? I'll never be on a traffic stop and just hearing... and like, I'm like, and the dude on the traffic stop looks at me, he's like, you heard that? And I'm like, what is that? He's like, you don't know what that is? I was like, nah. He's like, it's a fucking shootout, bro. And I was like, all right. I'm like, here's your stuff back, man. Just have a good one. And I'm out there and I'm like, dude, it must be 3 blocks away from me. And I'm like, hey, headquarters, I'm a 22-year-old kid. I got to fucking, I'm just like literally conveying this. You could hear it over there. I'm like, there's shooting going on over here. But dude, that was all day long. And they're like, yeah, all right, we'll send another unit out that way. And I'm like,
yeah.
If this was New Jersey, bro, we'd be bringing helicopters in. The state police getting activated. Bro, it was crazy. People, you pull up the scenes, you're kicking shell casings around. Like, I'm not talking 3. I'm talking, their drive-bys were so significant. Dude be kicking around 80, 90 fucking shell AK-47-62 on the ground in the middle of the fucking street in D.C.
Yeah. No, I believe it, man. I mean, people are oblivious to it, right? I mean, there are very dangerous places in this country. Everybody doesn't live in a bubble, and there are very brave people that do a thankless job every single day. So, I mean, dude, I mean, this is I'll get off my soapbox in a second for my love of law enforcement, but hey, bro, I mean it sincerely. Like, dude, I've seen, I mean, dude, good friends of mine in Chicago, like, they're just doing their job and having like frozen cans, shredded cans thrown at them, because there's protests or something, and they can't do anything about it, right? They have to like sit there and like dudes are getting like cut up and like literally have to just be like passive and victims. And like, to have to do that job and then take such deep criticism, on a very consistent basis is just absurd. So I just, I hope people realize that, there are people out there, courageous people willing to do thankless jobs to make sure that we sleep safe at night. And that happens domestically. It's not just our military that are out there doing that.
Yeah, dude, it's trying at times. And, we're hopeful that there's going to be resolutions and solutions. And I think, honestly, as weird as it sounds, I think there's a lot of hope. I think a lot of stuff is swinging back. I think people really, as sad as it is what law enforcement has gone through, I think at the same time it has bred a really ungodly amount of law enforcement support.
Yep.
And I think people stuck in situations like that, especially namely police officers, in situations like the ones you just described, they really get jaded because they think everybody hates them. They don't realize that they're like, some of those beloved human beings on the planet, especially in this country. Totally. And just a quick side note, if you'd like to know what parts of the country are the ones that Nick Norris is describing, you can go to a show called The First 48. And any show that they're filming active homicide investigations, because there's so many, they don't even have to wait. These are probably a good indication of your cities where you probably don't want to be. It's a great place to start.
It's a good hack. Good life hack for people to know.
They don't, dude. You want to hear something crazy? Paterson, New Jersey is a fucked up place, right? It's a tough place. I'm not saying there aren't good people there. I know for a fact that like when I first got in the police academy in 2001, I went to 3 of these things, but the first one I went to, they had just filmed cops there. So cops came and we did the Paterson ride along. And the guy actually who was our instructor ended up being the chief of Paterson, big agency. I don't know how many, they got hundreds and hundreds of guys with 500-600 cops. And he told us at the time he was a sergeant and he's a good dude. So cops came out and rode with him because he was like a hard charger, right? And they were like all excited they're going to be on Cops. And they actually wrote to them and said, we're not actually airing these episodes of Cops. And they're like, why? And they're like, because it's too depressing and it's too much of a reality check for the rest of America to see where you guys actually work. It's just not enough greenery. It's like, it's too fucking concrete. You guys deal with the craziest shit. And we don't think people can handle it. No kidding. Right?
Dude.
That's what they were
Crazy,
told. That's a real story. That's the story that he told us, that cops wouldn't even air what they saw in Paterson. That's how fucking nuts it was.
Oh, I believe it. It's actually, I mean, it's kind of a good segue, bro. Like what law enforcement deal with is, I mean, it's frankly can be unbearable, bro. I mean, I talk a lot about mental health and kind of emotional compartmentalization to do really tough jobs. And since I've started kind of talking more about that, I have a lot of friends that are police officers. And dude, I've had people come out of the woodworks, whether they're friends or just kind of total strangers that have heard me speak on some platform. and just tell me how bad, it's gotten, and that like they're afraid. I mean, afraid to even like admit it or seek help. But, some of these guys have been living that for 20 plus years, 30 years, working in some very, very tough areas to do that job in. And they carry such immense emotional like baggage that you just can't. I mean, dude, I served in the military active duty for 10 years, right? Some of these guys are on the job for 30 plus years. I got a chance to kind of decompartmentalize shit, a few years ago that was basically making me suffer, right? I got to kind of the bottom of the barrel for myself. And I needed to kind of like unlock some of that stuff and actually open up and be a little bit more emotionally vulnerable. Some of these guys don't get a choice, dude. They can't do it for 30 plus years. And like they're, potentially 3 times as worse off as I was when I got to the point where I was really struggling and I reached out for help. And dude, that's like endemic. That's like all over the country. So like when I make that comparison between law enforcement and the military, like it's a real comparison, man, because like, these are careers. Like I'm now in a follow-on career where I'm not carrying a gun every day. And I am not in a situation where I need to emotionally compartmentalize to do my job, to a certain degree. It's just a different type of stress. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that my message is so relevant to the law enforcement community. And, I want to make it very clear. I think that law enforcement communities across this country need to really double down on their focus on mental health and making sure that their officers are capable of coming forward and expressing some of the things that they're dealing with on the mental health side and not be stigmatized as broken or incapable of doing the job because they're willing to come forward and talk. That's the problem, brother. Like the inability to share because of a fear of ramifications or repercussions is why guys don't talk. And that's the reason why, we have guys taking their lives. And, I really would urge people in the law enforcement profession to just step up and kind of look for help when you need it.
There have been some steps forward in addressing some of this stuff, and it's certainly a topic that is not foreign on this podcast. New Jersey put something in place to get some real people with the right mindset, trying to do great things for the state of New Jersey and its law enforcement officers. But what happens is, because a lot of this is ran by complete morons, you're going to like this one. So I think, and I could be wrong on this, I think that every department now has to have some kind of mental health liaison, something like that, right? So somebody in the rank and file who gets designated with this thing where they took formal training, and if somebody is dealing with something and they want to come forward, this is the person they talk to. So let's talk about who they choose. I know of an agency that the person who went to that training was their internal affairs lieutenant. So if you want to come in, could you fucking imagine, dude? So the guy that you got to talk to is also the guy who's ready to lop your fucking head off.
Well, bro, there's no trust, right? That was the biggest, I'll tell you, one of the biggest hurdles for me and my friends as it relates to kind of talking to somebody, like seeing a therapist, was like the ability to trust that person, like to build rapport. And it's tough, dude. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like trusting any therapist, not in the situation you're talking about, which is like the internal affairs officer or agent that lieutenant, is also the therapist. Yeah, dude, that's crazy, right? That's like, there's no trust there, right? So, I mean, finding an outsider that actually isn't in that type of a scenario is like requisite. You need to do it. And you need to find somebody that actually guys will trust, that they'll be comfortable opening up to, or it's not going to happen.
Hey, dude, it's wild. At least it's being talked about. And I think one of the most significant problems is this is a real thing for a lot of people. And we know there's a fix to it. And I have friends that are therapists, but the shortage of therapists with the, impending, growing, need for therapists and appropriate and certified ones. So when I say to these people that I know that are in the field and they are law enforcement or military therapists, quote unquote, for those who understand why there has to be certain therapists designated to help and support law enforcement, these people could take on like 30, 35 clients a week. We got 40,000 cops in the state of New Jersey to begin with, right? So I say, what do you do? How do you find more people? They go, there is nobody else. And dude, what's crazy is like, you call therapists, let's say you're going through something, you need to talk to somebody. I mean, good luck finding somebody, man. You can't even get, and I'm not dissuading people from trying to find a therapist, but these are real issues. When I say to them, hey, why are there issues like this? They go, because of the amount of training that you need to get licensed. People just don't want to do it. They may want to help. And it just goes back to this whole theory of like why college is such bullshit, right? Schooling and education are two different things.
Yeah.
So do I think that somebody needs formal education to be able to be a psychotherapist? And the answer is, of course. But I don't think you got to shove them through 4 years of bullshit college to get this certification. So, unfortunately, dude, I was somewhere recently and I saw this college. Oh, I was driving. Where the fuck was I driving to? I think it might have been Dallas. And you had to see the buildings at this college. I've never even heard of it before. And the stadium. And I'm like, I've never even heard of this college. It just goes to show you how much money they're generating that they almost don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
At the expense of everybody else, man. We could really get to where we need to and get a lot of these. There are people who really want to help. But dude, take a guy like me. I want to help in mental therapy. Let's say I like it. I'm 41, staring down the pipe of 42. What am I going to 4 years of college?
No,
and then another 2 years of post-college to try to 6-7 years from now help some motherfuckers? Like, it's not happening.
Yeah. Here's my thought as it relates to the solution, right? Because I'm a solution-oriented type of person, right?
You and me
I don't
both,
like
brother.
to just, I'm not trying to hypothesize. I think it's bullshit. The ability for guys and gals to feel comfortable enough to kind of support each other, where it's a mutually supportive dynamic, is the only way that we start to put a dent in the issue that we're dealing with right now. And I think it starts by, people that are struggling being willing to open up and share, right? And like I saw it, my personal experience was I was totally emotionally closed off. And dude, I would not tell anybody that I was struggling. But when I finally did, I got to my breaking point and I opened up to some other guys that I respected. Dude, it was reciprocated immediately from like an emotional vulnerability standpoint. Like vulnerability begets vulnerability. Not dissimilar to like emotional reaction begets emotional reaction. So I just like to encourage people like, hey, if you're struggling, if you can find a therapist, find like a trauma trained professional that can really help you work through your shit. But you don't need that. Like you need to like immediately triage and say, hey man, if I can't find that person or I don't trust that person, go to the person that you trust. Like go to the person that you love or they love you. And they would do anything for you. And I know those people exist for everybody. Some people may have more friends like that or loved ones than others, but everybody has somebody, right? Especially in the law enforcement profession or the military profession, you rely on your coworkers to protect you, right? To keep you alive if you're in a bad situation. Dude, it's like absurd that you wouldn't trust them, with you being vulnerable about something that's bothering you. Or showing a side of yourself that you haven't really shown to other people. So I think we need to be there for each other. There has to be that like organic solution internal to the organization if we're going to put a dent in this, because there isn't enough therapists. Like it's impossible. We're not going to train enough people, and there's not enough incentive for somebody to take on that profession, right? Like you mentioned, like maybe they can see 35, 45 people a week or whatever. That's actually crazy in and of itself. That therapist is probably a train wreck because they're shouldering everybody else's emotional baggage. So, we definitely do not have enough of those people doing that thankless job to be able to solve the problem unless we do something about it ourselves.
To just give some context of the theory that you have, in October 2021, we had our first Street Cop conference and it was fucking legit, dude. It was tits. We had like Marcus Luttrell came and Dakota Meyer, Tim Kennedy. Like we had a bunch of other Tommy
Wonderful
Laren.
people.
Yeah, they're fucking awesome, dude. And it's really cool. Some of the things I didn't realize was going to happen after having an event like this is that I would befriend these people. It's very, very nice to. It's a little bit of a humble brag at times too, but it's really cool that I got to meet those people. But and it's funny because we're talking about this tonight. The reason I did go down to Atlantic City last night is because we have our annual statewide PBA mini convention. And my friend Josh Fidel, who was shot in the line of duty in the head in Atlantic City, was there. So I had dinner with him. And I love that guy. Like when I tell you I love him. He's one of the most, oh, dude, everybody's got to meet Josh once. He is something else, dude. And, he walks with complete atrophy. He's like a cripple. He's like, yeah, you like my pimp stride. And like, he's crippled. He's got like big atrophy on his, like he walks with a complete, it's not that he has physical impairment. He has neurological impairment. So, but we were talking a lot last night, and his friend Billy was doing a lot of nice work. He was the old deputy chief in Atlantic City. We're talking about a lot of things. And, I said, Bill, we have this group called the Street Cop Survivors Club. And now I think we have over 200 members. And I go, the price of admission sucks. But in 2021, we honored 32 police officers who were significantly injured in the line of duty, whether it was in a car wreck or, a knife or fucking gunfire, whatever it may be. And so we did really nice things, brought them up on stage, gave them this award called the Street Cop Survivor Award. And after, I've been interviewing these people on this podcast for a while, and I hear like, people just don't know. People just don't know what it's like. They send me to the VA to talk to people. It's not the fucking same, right? These guys did get shot, but it's a different context. And Josh talked about this last night. So I brought these guys in. I said, listen, guys, all I'm hearing is the same thing over and over again. So what I think we should do at a very minimum is start a Facebook group, right? You're all on Facebook. That's how you all found me. We'll call it the Street Cop Survivors Club. I just had this thing. It just came to me. You guys were all talking. I go, I'll help you. I can't run the whole thing, but I'll give you guys assistance and guidance. And collectively, as you guys grow, I think the people who are going to become administrators in the group and somebody who's going to take the bull by the horns a little bit more will assume those roles. And they have. There's 4 or 5 of them now. And dude, they're doing great things. And there's nothing that makes me happier than when I see one of these men or women who literally paid almost the ultimate sacrifice, whose lives have been altered from being shot 7 fucking times, right? These guys are in walkers and wheelchairs, and dude, they're no different than military veterans. And they're like, bro, that group saved my life, bro. Like, it's the best thing that ever happened. I get that all the time from these guys. That group saved my life. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And we there is a high price of admission. We know a lot of people are in pain. And I always remind them, they go, because they'll call me and say, hey, this guy wants to come in. What's your thoughts? I go, my thoughts are, you're the Street Cop Survivors Club, right? I know what you guys want to keep it at. You wanted to have significant physical pain. I go, pain's brother is just pain. So let's talk about mental pain as well.
Yep.
If you got a guy who went through something very, very significant, like maybe responded to a school shooting, saw 20 fucking murdered kids.
Yep.
Everybody in this fucking profession wears a blue line on their chest. We all stand for the blue line flag. And if that's what we all stand for, then that's your brother in pain. So let's talk about what pain is. You guys have physical pain. Some of you have significant mental pain due to your physical pain. But, the scars that you can see on you are different than the ones you can see on them. So I think that not everybody gets to come into it, but I think somebody like that certainly qualifies to be part of our group. And we try to do a lot of nice things for those guys and girls because they deserve it, because that's who we are as human beings. But it actually proves your theory, dude. The problem is again, it's that trust.
Yep.
They're putting that wall down and saying, I'll step in here. And, they want anonymity. We've tried to run programs. We've had multiple psychotherapists get involved with us as, dude, listen, I'm telling you, on the track to put these classes on, Nick, I'm not lying to you. People are like, hey, do you guys think it's important? You put it on the, on a fast track for mental health and law enforcement. You guys are a big entity in law enforcement. I said, yeah, man. The problem is we do free classes and nobody comes.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine? We know for a fact that of 100 guys, 28 are suffering. The class is free.
If not more, bro. I mean, I can
Right.
tell you, I can tell you the guys, half of the guys that I knew that were struggling were suicidal. And I didn't even realize that. I mean, out of 100 dudes, 50 guys were at one point ready to take their life. So I guarantee you the numbers are even bigger than we assume. But yeah, to your point, dude, it's all, you just don't trust, right? Like, that's why, like, you just got to be willing to go to somebody that you trust. And it might, I mean, the big groups are great if you can put them together. But to your point, man, like, it's like people don't trust the big groups, right? Even if they know if there's a bunch of there's other dudes just like them in the group, they still don't trust because they're like, hey, maybe there's that one guy that is gonna weaponize it against me. And you're so on the defensive in the profession, right? Like you're always worried about like, I got to be careful. I got to be guarded. I don't want it. Like, I don't want this used against me, because if my career is jeopardized, that means my family's jeopardized. And we're all providers. We want to make sure we take care of our own. So like guys will suffer in silence and just like be like, yeah, I'll just deal with it. But I urge people, don't just deal with it. Like literally find one person, dude. Just find the one person that you do trust and be vulnerable with them. Open up to them. Because I guarantee you, if you truly trust them, they will not use it against you. They're not going to judge you. Frankly, they'll probably be like, feel liberated themselves because they could actually offload some stuff in your direction as well. It's like a mutually supportive environment, right?
Nick, I just had an idea. So last night, I got to meet Josh's therapist. She does work with law enforcement exclusively. Billy Mazer, who is the old deputy chief there, that's what he does now for law enforcement. And I told him last night, like, I'll invite you guys on a podcast. I have their numbers. It'd be really cool if we all got back together when I bring them in person, and we got to chop it up on that front with me, you, and them too. They're doing really cool work, bro. You're going to like to hear some of the shit they do. Like, they're really,
I love it.
They've got a lot of funding to get people like the help they need right away. These are the people who are, and Billy kept saying to me last night, he's like, yeah, I think, dude, thanks for doing what you do. And then I'm like, bro, I think it's just us. I think it's just who we are. I know what you're saying, but bro, I mean, everybody's, but just who we are in nature of our own beings of, we know we can help, and we never turn our back to being able to help. Even in the internet day and age of people being keyboard warriors, I'm a piece of shit, the whole fucking nine, right? I just don't care. I don't care. People asked me last night, we got some bullshit going on at the fucking state of New Jersey here. Like, what's going on with that? I'm like, I don't fucking care, dude. Right? We got cops who are not killing themselves because of the work we're doing. I'm not pandering to these fucking assholes, because I care more about the men and women in blue. They don't give a rat's ass about you. I know they don't. If they did, they'd actually be doing things to help. We are, and we've got to suffer the detriment of these fuckers because they're just self-serving, dude. They want to make a name. They're anti-police. It's wild shit. But again,
human, dude, the thing that people forget, man, is like we are literally human beings first, right? We are so quick to label each other, and when it comes down to it, dude, we have the same flesh and blood. It doesn't matter, dude. And like people, like, they forget that, dude. They label somebody, right? Like label somebody a police officer, and just because there was a bad police officer, this terrible experience, dude, we're imperfect human beings. You're going to now label the entire group as such. I mean, dude, it's crazy, Nick, to me.
If you think about it, it's racism at its finest.
It's the same concept, right? I mean,
it's the same exact thing.
There is no room in my life for anybody to cast judgment widely on any group of people for any reason. It's ridiculous.
It is no different than
never do that. I would never do that. I mean, it's a tragedy. Like, we are human beings. Like, let's try to work together as human beings and help each other. We all feel the same feelings. We all deal with the same pain, the same issues emotionally. Like, and we're all out there struggling to survive. So, I mean, it's just, people get so entrenched in their own ego and their own position and their own agenda. Like, I know I'm kind of like urging people to do like the unthinkable, right? Like, come together and actually try to be like good people to each other. But I mean, you got to start small, man. And I think that, if you start small, you can do great things, but you never can compromise on that reality that we are human beings, regardless of whether you're wearing a uniform or you're wearing civilian attire. It doesn't make a difference, man. We just got to treat each other better.
So let's do that, dude. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. If you're cool with it, we'll fucking we'll bring them in. We'll schedule it up to try to match it with your shit. If you're cool with coming back on, dude, and we'll fucking rock and roll.
I'd love to. And you know what? It'd probably be a good opportunity. I can share some of it's a conversation in and of itself, but I'm pretty out there in a public way about my advocacy for the work that's going on in psychedelics right now. And it's an interesting kind of talking on a law enforcement platform.
No, dude, I think I think these motherfuckers really got to start having open-mindedness to this. Like when they like made mushrooms legal, like you guys realize it was for like medical purposes, right? But like Fox News made it seem like everybody's gonna be like sitting in the jungles, like eating mushroom caps, like a fucking of Washington. Like, dude, this stuff is progression forward, and
bro.
You've got to get out of your fucking 1953 mindset. Like, dude, how about this? In New Jersey, as law enforcement now, you can smoke weed. And guys were like, that's absurd. And I'm like, is it? Because I got to tell you, I've been in this game 22 plus years. And you know what I think is absurd? When I go to a tailgating party and I watch 23 cops from an agency literally drink 18 White Claws, do 12 shots.
Yep.
And are literally can't walk, throwing up, starting their cars, getting in domestic incidents.
I could tell you, man, alcohol is an endemic issue in our community. Obviously, I mean, I'll speak from a personal experience. Like, dude, I've watched alcohol destroy so many lives of so many friends. And it's legal. So it's just okay. Right.
Right.
It's
the only drug that if you refuse, you're a fucking square, right?
Totally, man. And it could destroy your life. You know, it kills more people in this country than like anything else, right?
Dude, I got to tell you, I if you gave me an option, I had to pick one or the other, I would say you got to forfeit booze and bring the weed out. But I don't know if I can dance as good on weed, though. I don't smoke it, right? Because like, and by the way, I also know that I can't dance as good on alcohol. I just think I can. Totally. And then I see myself on video the next day, and I'm like, can you please not show that to me? Yeah, it's like,
well, to take it full circle, brother, yeah, there's progress being made. And I'll tell you, you know, the progress being made in the realm of psychedelic medicine as a catalyst to get people on the right path and allow people to unpack the stuff they've been suppressing emotionally for years is uncanny. Nothing else like it in my experience. And frankly, I mean, I don't know if me and a lot of my friends would be here if it weren't for some of these compounds. So I'm a huge advocate of them. I can't think of another community that is more closely related to the military than the law enforcement community. And dude, if it's working for us, I guarantee you that the law enforcement community would flourish if they were given the opportunity to have these experiences in a controlled fashion where it's legal and they don't have to compromise their career or their retirement. It's just a tragedy that, you know, we got to go to Mexico or Costa Rica in order to seek treatment for trauma that's inflicted in this country on us, right? Mm-hmm. So crazy to me. So yeah, would love to have a deeper conversation on that and the wonderful people that are doing the tough work on the trauma front with law enforcement officers. I think it would be killer. Would love to do it.
Anyway, all right, dude, we'll set it up with Frankie. And it was real awesome meeting you, dude. Thank you so much for everything.
Likewise, Dennis.
I'll see you, dude. Take care.
Later, brother.
Guys, if you're in an area where you're trying to get to our classes, but we're not close to you, fret not. We actually have on-demand training at streetcop.com. You can take that course online right now, and then you could attend that training in the future at no additional cost. You can redeem your voucher, so you get 2 for the price of 1. We don't want to deny you the ability to take this training now, especially knowing that it can keep you safe, at a very minimum, putting bad guys in jail where they belong, and at the maximum, going home to your family. Check out streetcop.com for that offer.